Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and I'm pleased to have with me Reverend Brian Scott, who's the Executive Director of the Religious Coalition for Emergency Human Needs here in Frederick County. Welcome.
Thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure being with you.
Well, I'm very happy to have you here. I've known you for a number of years because you've been with the Religious Coalition for a long time.
That is true.
But I'm not sure everybody in the community knows who you are and what you do. So why don't you start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and the role of the Religious Coalition?
Okay. The Religious Coalition started back in 1981. So it's been around 35 years. I've been with the Religious Coalition since 1999, so for half that time frame. And the Religious Coalition has grown. We originally started with a network of food banks, actually when there was only one in Burkittsville in Frederick County, and helped expand those networks of food to meet that need. We also have from the very beginning been helping out with homeless prevention, which is a great need in the county, rental assistance, those kind of things to keep people in their homes, and security deposits to help people move out of homelessness if they are in homelessness as well. We also provide some health care services that folks may not be familiar with, like dental or prescription assistance. And then back in 1990 was when the Religious Coalition started the Cold Weather Shelter, responding to a community need, because prior to that point in time, there was really no place during the middle of winter where people could go. Four churches in downtown Frederick offered their basements on a rotating basis, and then eventually it had to expand beyond that. The city offered property, and then we purchased property on Green Street where our facility sits now, and provides services as well. Originally, I think they thought we might have about 30 people, maybe no more than 30. It's grown from there. So now what many folks, what we call the Alan P. Lenden Jr. Emergency Shelter, is where the Cold Weather Shelter is based. And then we also have a year-round services that we provide now for folks during the summer and spring and fall to try to help people get connected with case management services, connected with housing, connected with job placement, connected with various disability services that they may not have been connected with before. And then we've always been involved with some limited, usually motel placement in the old days, for families with children. Mm-hmm. And that's not the most cost-effective way. It's not. And so we moved towards more back in September 2014, the Family Emergency Shelter model, which we kind of borrowed from another group called Family Promise, which has 200 communities throughout the United States, where they have a model which is basically a faith-based community, provides case management and volunteer coordination, and connects with churches that provide on a rotating basis during the evenings shelter for families with children. Like their model, we only have about 4 or 5 families at one particular time. But there is, when we started this back in September 2014, there was no other emergency shelter for families with children. So it is kind of the first of its kind.
So when you started with the cold weather shelter, was it mostly focused on single men?
It still is. Most of the folks that we serve in the shelter, although we serve families as well as single adults, but the Lenden Shelter is the larger of the facilities. The Lenden Shelter is an 80-bed facility. We've had a number of nights where we reached our capacity and we established a partnership with the rescue mission. We often talk about helping our neighbor in need. The rescue mission is literally our neighbor. Their
They're
property
very close.
adjourns our property, and so for a number of reasons that makes a lot of sense. And they also help with some daytime. The Lenden Shelter is open from 6:30 p.m. until 7 a.m. when there's freezing weather days. Also, the rescue mission has provided some day shelter for folks who are in need, and a big community need as a result of that.
Okay. So how many people do you serve on an average day at the L&P Lenden Shelter? A day like today when the weather's a little bit better, it's not the below freezing weather anymore, thank goodness.
Well, January and February are a peak census, so if you ask me that question, let's say in March, the answer would be a little bit different, but now is when we could serve over capacity. The past week, we've still been in the high 70s. Sometimes we'll be in the low 80s. So that's where that is. What's changed from years back, besides the number of folks that we see, and likewise, you know, the population of homeless has grown since the early 1980s. There's more people in Frederick since the early 1980s as well. And we're seeing now more folks in the shelter who are seniors, more who are women. When I first started, we probably saw about 10% of the population was women. Now it's 25%. And our senior population is close to about 20% of that. So that's been a big change, but it's also reflective of the changes that are occurring and the Frederick County population as well.
Yeah, well, it's occurring, I think, across the country. I don't think what we're experiencing is significantly different from what's happening elsewhere.
Yes.
What we are trying to do is to prevent homelessness. So if
yes.
somebody is at risk of facing homelessness, you know, they can contact the Religious Coalition and try to get rental assistance to stay in their home. And that obviously is the most cost-effective way to help somebody, is to try to stabilize their current situation.
And we welcome, you know, sometimes people come for eviction assistance like the day of the eviction, and it really doesn't give us much time to work with. So we always encourage people, if you're having an issue, and particularly if you have an eviction notice, please call the Religious Coalition, and we can talk about some options that you might have. As part of that, we're seeing more folks who are in need of rental assistance. Went up about 35% last year. So those are things that are happening. Altogether at the Religious Coalition office, we see over about 3,500 persons a year.
Wow.
Originally, the Religious Coalition was founded as a way for churches to centralize the services, and also in response to budget cuts that occurred there. But it's kind of grown beyond that original purpose into a community resource for a number of different kinds of things. Just take like our food banks now. We're seeing about 1,400 households a month and the network of food banks throughout Frederick County. So that has grown, but as people lose jobs, oftentimes people come to us because they've lost a job, they've had an illness in the family, or they've had a breakup in the family. Many of the families we see, including the Family Emergency Shelter, are single-parent families, and it's very difficult in Frederick to make ends meet, unless you often have two folks that are working in the family. So many of the folks that we see are struggling with that, and we see them in the network of food banks. We see them at the Religious Coalition office. Sometimes we try to do other things to meet that community need, like we're also work with local churches and houses of worship with a school supply drive.
Right.
In August, we also help with Christmas assistance, coordinating with Salvation Army and other helping organizations in the county as well. So the need has grown since the original days as well.
Well, and I know the services have changed a bit over time because the need has changed. And I know the Family Emergency Shelter, with the partnership with several churches, is relatively new.
Yes.
And I know another addition to that is the Resource Center.
Yes.
So can you talk about what that is?
Yeah, the Family Resource Center is something that we've just finished construction. It was a parsonage with Asbury United Methodist Church. And we have a long-term lease with that church, in which for $10 a year we have the lease, and then we have renovated the property, and it's just like a home. So what it is very similar. It's got a living room, like we've got a living room in our house. It's got a dining room, so it would be the same as if you were to go into someone's house. It's where our folks, because they rotate at different churches, and you mentioned 20, and there are 20, and about 13 of those are host sites. They include almost all the downtown churches, but not just in the city of Frederick and other parts of Frederick. We have a van that we're using. Actually, the city of Frederick, through the Community Action Agency, has helped us with that. So there's a number of partnerships that we've established as part of that. We usually see about 4 to 5 families that would be using this living room or the facility. And in churches, oftentimes they don't have like showers or bathroom or laundry facilities. And so that's where this occurs. It's also where some of our staff are located. Case management is one of the most effective tools to move people out of homelessness. We use case management both in the Lenden Shelter and with the Family Emergency Shelter. And we've had altogether about 34 families that altogether about 100 persons, 65% have moved out of homelessness as a result of the Family Emergency Shelter. So
that's excellent, because that's the outcome you're looking for.
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a temporary spot where we kind of provide some resources for folks to get on their feet and then move into productive jobs in the community.
Well, it's an example of the fact that we have a very caring community.
Yes.
We appreciate your leadership and all the good work of the Religious Coalition. You really do provide an important safety net in our community. I'm happy that Frederick County government partners with you, as does the city of Frederick and many, many others joining our faith community. So I want to thank you for being here today and for sharing a little bit about what you do. But if people know somebody who's at risk for homelessness or needs case management assistance, I really want to encourage them to call you at the Religious Coalition, because I know you'll point them in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for joining us, and again remind you that the Religious Coalition is here to help people in need in our community. So if you know somebody who needs some assistance, please feel free to contact the Religious Coalition. Thank you for joining us today.